I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
This has been a long time coming. We have mentioned this movie. I can't tell you how many times throughout the course of this podcast, but it is finally time to talk Dick Tracy from 1990. One of the major reasons we did not do this movie anytime sooner was because this movie is not streaming anywhere. But yeah, that was one of the main reasons we never talked about. We never really did the movie directly. We've even did some episodes like, yeah, we'll never talk about Dick Tracy, so here's our blah, blah, blahs about the movie, because this is tangentially related to the movie. But we just decided to just buckle down, pay $5 to YouTube and rent the movie so we can watch it.
Yeah.
The road to this movie honestly is more interesting than the actual movie. And that's really why I always wanted to talk about this movie, because of that backstory. Of course, Dick Tracy, the very popular newspaper comic strip that became a comic book, became toys, became a movie serial series, became a television series, short-lived television series in like the 50s. It was even a cartoon, I believe, in the 60s that was really weird because they gave him like, and I showed a clip to Kiki, they gave him like a Mexican stereotype sidekick for some reason.
Yeah, that had to be Mel Blanc, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's
weird. It's weird. But yeah, Dick Tracy, pulp comic detective, so it's like, it's a popular character. And there have been many attempts to make a Hollywood film based off the character of Dick Tracy. And all attempts of making the movie all tie around one man. He's so vain, he probably thinks we're talking about him, Warren Beatty. The first attempts at a Dick Tracy big Hollywood movie was in the 1970s. And by that point, Beatty had arrived. He was already a big leading man at that point. He had just done a movie called Bonnie and Clyde. Good movie. Watch it.
Yeah, I really do like that movie.
It also cemented Beatty as a producer, an eventual writer and director. He could choose whatever projects he wanted by that point. And Dick Tracy was such an important character in his youth that when a Dick Tracy movie was in development, he wanted in. He had to be in this movie because Dick Tracy meant so much to him. And we've heard this story about other actors and other comic book characters, Gambit and Deadpool. And we've talked about that a lot. But for Warren Beatty, it was Dick Tracy. That was his passion project. He wanted this movie to happen. But again, we're in the 1970s. We're in the era of movies like Taxi Driver. We're in the era of movies like Dirty Harry, Cobra, Death Wish. That's the kind of gruff and gritty movies that Hollywood was making at the time, largely because of the success of Bonnie and Clyde. So the best way I can describe it would be sort of the beginning of what we would eventually call the anti-hero.
Well, and also, if you were going to do a cop movie, it was going to be the grim, gritty detective that maybe he steps one foot or, jumps both feet outside the law a little bit, but it's in service of goodness and right. And, if the criminals don't play by the books, neither will I, And that's just not Dick Tracy. It's not who Dick Tracy has ever been. He's a cop, but he's a good cop. He's the best cop. He's square jawed and, all American and, all that kind of crap.
That's what Warren Beatty was pushing for. While the Hollywood studios were pushing for a more Dirty Harry type of movie, Warren Beatty was like, no, let's stick to the source material. If we're going to make a Dick Tracy movie, let's make a Dick Tracy movie. Don't make Death Wish and call it Dick Tracy. Don't make Dirty Harry and call it Dick Tracy.
Yeah, he really wanted the original, strip that showed up in his youth. The one that he would have been familiar with in, the 1950s.
Yeah, and that was what caused a lot of friction and why the movie never got made until the 90s. So through the 70s and into the 80s, the film bounced around to different studios and different producers and different directors, but with Beatty kind of cemented as the star. And Beatty literally saying, no, no, no. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And eventually, Beatty just bought the rights himself. Because if no one else was going to do this movie right, he was going to do the movie right. Which is fine. I've said this before. I appreciate the petty that Warren Beatty had when it came to this character. His love for this character to do it right. And the pettiness is that, you know what? I'm not going to give anyone else a chance to get it wrong.
Yeah, he is going to go into his grave with an iron grip on those rights.
For now, I'll get to it.
Well, I mean, that was always his plan, at least. He's as long as I'm breathing, nobody is going to get Dick Tracy wrong because it's that important to me, which I can kind of respect.
Yeah, like I said, I respect the petty.
Yeah, if something's that important to you and you're able to do it, you're able to get a hold of it and protect it, I guess. I kind of do respect that you're like, no, this is precious and I want to guard it from people who would mess it up. I mean, if I could get a hold of the rights to X-Men.
Good luck fighting Disney on that one.
Yeah.
So by this point in the 1980s, Warren Beatty now holds the rights to Dick Tracy and he wants to make this movie, but no one really is wanting to make the movie that Warren Beatty wants to make. Now we get to Disney. This is where Disney enters the picture because at this point, Disney has had a lot of problems. A hostile takeover attempt in the early 1980s. We've covered this when we covered the documentary Wakey Sleepy Beauty, which forced a lot of higher-ups in Disney out because they allowed it to happen. Which brings in...
For those who do not remember, right about the time that Beatty starts really pushing in the 80s to get Dick Tracy made, we're talking about the Katzenberg era of Disney.
Yeah. So like I said, after the hostile takeover attempt, the higher-ups are pushed out. We get Michael Eisner, we get Frank Wells, we get Jeffrey Katzenberg from Paramount into Disney, and they're revitalizing the whole film division. And since they were already working at Paramount, and at one point the Dick Tracy movie was at Paramount, they're like, okay, what movies can we get that can be, a family hit that we can sell with a big enough star? Oh, hey, Warren Beatty has this idea for this comic book movie he wants to do. Well, okay, let's give him a shot. Let's give him a modest budget. Let's give him a set completion date, and let's see what he does. Keep in mind that I must say this, at this point in his career, this is 1985, 86, somewhere around there, Warren Beatty had a reputation of being one of the most difficult people in Hollywood to work with, but he got results. And that, unfortunately, means more than anything else. Just take a look at Jared Leto.
Yeah. Well,
so,
we're not calling Warren Beatty a cult leader. Just
no.
FYI.
No, but I'm saying I was just using it as an example. There are a lot of problematic actors, problematic directors in Hollywood that keep getting work because they get results. That's all I'm saying.
He's more, from what I understand, Warren Beatty is more in the James Cameron difficult. The other thing that started happening around 85, 86 is that there was this guy that you may have heard us talk about in our Disney history series named Tim Burton. He was like a little no account kind of sort of animator guy that worked for Disney for a little while and then got fired. And he starts causing some trouble over at Warner Brothers because he's going to make him a Batman movie.
Wait a minute, you're going to get the guy who played Beetlejuice to play Batman? Oh.
That comedy actor? That comedy actor can't play Batman.
Mr. Mom is Batman? Oh, no.
And you're going to get that weirdo from Oingo Boingo to do a soundtrack for it? Come on.
And it became the biggest movie of the year.
Well, yeah. And the thing is it didn't only become the biggest movie of the year. It started after the initial, and we've talked about this before in our superhero movies, you know, especially like when we were talking about Blade and stuff and how superhero movies used to not be the thing. You know, Batman had a huge marketing push. Warner Brothers went all out, and if you did not live through it, it is difficult to explain to you what it was like to live through the Batman, like, avalanche.
Batmania's running wild, brother.
Yeah. That was like the summer leading up to the summer of 89 was one of the craziest times to be a kid, just for like, you know, you're just like walking down the street and suddenly you just get assaulted with Batman advertisements and toys and, you know, marketing things from McDonald's and like Batman cereal and Batman t-shirts and Batman
the flamethrower.
Yeah, that is the joke that they're going for in Spaceballs, and people kind of forget that. Like that's kind of one of the big things is like, you know, is like Star Wars did it, and then like Batman took it and went, hey, do you see that thing Star Wars did? What if that, but to 1 billion?
And we've talked about the Rocketeer. Every studio wanted their Batman, and then we would get movies about the Shadow and the Phantom, and yeah, Dick Tracy.
Yeah, so Warren Beatty finally, you know, once Batman started making a kerfuffle over at the Warner Brothers studio and people started going like, oh wait, this isn't a joke. This could be the next huge thing. They're like, all right, if we're going to make that the next thing, let's make that the next thing. Somebody call Beatty and tell him his like weird little comic book movie can finally go forward.
But there was some provisions in this. Warren Beatty, perfectionist as an actor and as a director. Nothing wrong with that, but it does tend to have long hours and films tend to get behind schedule and over budget. His award-winning movie Reds, which he won Best Director for, notorious for that. So they kind of had to reel him in a bit. It's okay, here's your budget. Here's your schedule. If you go behind schedule, if you go over budget, it's coming out of your pocket. And that's kind of what happened. It did go behind schedule, it did go over budget, and Beatty had to pay for all of it out of his own pocket, much to his own chagrin. But hey, you wanted this movie done, this is what we're going to put down. Don't blame Disney for it. They're a business. They got to kind of cover their own butts on that one.
Yeah, especially in the 80s when Disney did not have infinite money.
Yeah, nowadays no one cares. I mean, Disney can do whatever. But Disney was kind of struggling. Like I said, they're just getting over an attempt at a hostile takeover of the company.
Yeah. Disney has since then discovered the infinite money glitch. But
Yeah.
yeah. Back in the 80s, not so much.
Yeah, not so much. And a lot of the budget of this movie is going into the cast of this movie. Because this is an all-star cast. Because not only do you have Warren Beatty as Dick Tracy, you've got Al Pacino as Big Boy Caprice, the villain of the movie. You've got Madonna at the height of her fame as Breathless Mahoney. You've got Dick Van Dyke as a district attorney. You've got Kathy Bates as a cameo.
Turning. Yeah, Kathy Bates
Dustin
has one line in this.
Blink and you'll miss it. The late great Catherine O'Hara.
Has zero lines in this movie.
Yeah, she's just sitting there with the other crime bosses. And that's it.
Catherine O'Hara stars in this movie as Lady Who Sits at Desk. You have to look up the Wikipedia to figure out who she's playing and that she even has a name and that it is even her.
Like James Caan is here for 5 minutes in a cameo before they kill him off. James Caan.
Paul Sorvino is in 5 minutes of this movie before they kill him off.
Dustin Hoffman. So it's like, this is a who's who. Like, Warren Beatty went through his phone book, called up all of his friends, and they're in the movie, and they got paid, which already balloons the budget of this movie.
And the thing is that the only reason Madonna got the job is because she was willing to work for scale. She made a deal that was basically like a tie-in with her new record, her tour. They would let her like cross promote and everything. She'd get like, a song, new songs to record that were written by Stephen Sondheim, which was a get. We'll get to that.
She got to have one of her own songs on the soundtrack. Has nothing to do with the movie. Does not fit in with the theme of the movie, but she got her song Vogue on the soundtrack. It's not in the movie, but it's on the soundtrack.
Yeah, you will not find that anywhere in the movie, but it is on the soundtrack. But she agreed to work for scale, which is, minimum wage for actors, basically. And so she was the cheapest person there as far as like, paycheck. Everybody else was pretty much getting paid more than Charlie Korsmo might have gotten paid more than Madonna for this movie. Which I had forgotten that was Charlie Korsmo.
Yeah.
And he looks so young in this. This one came out in 1990. The movie he's most known for, Hook, came out in 91, and he looks like 4 years older. It's so weird.
Glenn Headley as Tess Trueheart, Dick Tracy's girlfriend. That wraps up the cast. And you're probably right. They all probably got paid more than Madonna did. But Madonna got the cross promotion, the songs on the soundtrack. She got to have one of her dancers dress up as Dick Tracy, and she got to sing the songs to him and all that.
Yeah. And she also got to date Warren Beatty for a while, if you consider that a perk. I don't know. It depends on your taste in men.
What I'm going to say is that Warren Beatty was 55 when this movie was made. So he was already too old to play the character. But like I said, he had a hard grip on the rights. And if he wanted to have himself as Dick Tracy, he was going to have himself as Dick Tracy.
Yeah. I am going to say one of the weirdest things in the cast, there are some interesting cameos, mostly that, we've already mentioned the wonderful Catherine O'Hara that's in there, but also one I had forgotten about is that Colm Meaney, who everybody will know as Miles O'Brien from Star Trek, shows up for just one scene as one of the cops that is outside Tess's home. after the drive-by. And he shows up to be like, "Hey, Tracy, are you okay?" And he's like, "Watch after Tess and the kid." And they're like, "Okay." And he's like that guy. He's got like one line.
And did we mention Mandy Patinkin yet?
Yeah, Mandy Patinkin is in this as the
As
piano player.
88 Keys. Of course, that is a perfect piano player name, 88 Keys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of people. There's a lot of famous people in here, and there's a lot of stars.
Every
And it's
single person that is on screen in this movie is somebody famous, whether you recognize them or not.
yeah,
A lot of times you won't recognize them because they're under like 70 pounds of prosthetics, but
which they did win an Oscar for, I believe.
yeah, I mean this one I think this is tied, I think, with Black Panther for Oscar wins for a comic book movie. As weird as that is.
Yeah, and it would also win Best Original Song for Sooner or Later, the song that Madonna sings in the movie.
Which is, a lot of times we're like, how did that song win the Oscar for that year? Because, one of the other songs was better, or a song that didn't even get nominated that came out that same year was better. No, this one deserved the win. Sooner or Later is perhaps the greatest thing in this movie. And everyone who has ever performed that song sings it better than Madonna. I have heard Bernadette Peters sing this. Like, I've heard so many actresses and singers sing that song over the years after the movie, and every single one of them absolutely kills it compared to Madonna. It is a crime that it is considered like a Madonna song, because if you want to hear somebody absolutely slay this song, go look up Ruthie Henshaw's performance of Sooner or Later. She's possibly the best in all of history to ever record that song.
I will put, and again, the love that Warren Beatty had for this character. He made sure everything in this movie matched the comic book, to the point where there are like 7 colors in this movie to match what 1940s comics would print in color. Every yellow is the same shade of yellow. Every green is the same shade of green. Every blue is the same shade of blue. Every orange is the same shade of orange, and etc., which of course, again, balloons the budget, because now every prop has to be painted one of those colors, even if it's not that color naturally. So like the big finale, when they're in the bridge and the gears, all of the gears have to be painted red and yellow. The tools are painted red and yellow. There's a water canister that's painted red, a heating vent that has to get painted red. The streets have red and yellow lighting on it to match the colors, so it looks like a comic book. Which, again, I appreciate the dedication, but man, that would have blown up the budget.
Yeah, I mean, in an era before you have, computer effects, and you can just go in after and change the color palette however you want. I mean, every bit of this was practical, or it was a matte painting, a hand done matte painting.
We have made fun of it last week when we talked about the Love Bug, we did. But this is a comic book movie. This can get away with it.
Yeah, there is absolutely supposed to be nothing of the real world in this film. It is meant to be stylized. From the moment that the first frame comes on, you are meant to think like this is its own universe,
Yeah.
in the same way that Tim Burton did with Batman. Like, you have no connection to reality when you're watching like the Tim Burton Batman. There's no there's no part where you have to suspend disbelief because you're either there from frame one or you're not.
Yeah, this entire movie was done on sets. There's no real world location filming, which adds to the fact that this, again, this is its own world. It's its own reality, and it does feel like these characters are stepping out of a comic book.
This is one of those movies that, like people talk about the James Cameron Avatar movies. Okay, they tell you that it looks beautiful and the story is mind-meltingly dull. And that's what you get with Dick Tracy, is that it looks incredible. This is one of those every frame could be a painting in a gallery kind of movies. You can take a screenshot from any moment in this film, and to this day, it holds up gorgeously. They've never remastered this movie. It looks exactly like it did when it came out, and you go see it in the theater. Okay. But, I'm going to say that this was one of the first movies they used digital sound for, which Danny Elfman hated at the time because he was very much like, you want that analog, the warmth of the analog sound. But, the movie sounds amazing. It's balanced perfectly. The music sounds like they stole it from Batman because Danny Elfman didn't yet know how to change his style enough, I guess, from movie to movie. So it was like, oh, we're doing another superhero movie. Okay, I'll just reuse half the stuff that I did for Batman. So it's like, okay, I'm watching Dick Tracy, but it sounds like I'm watching Batman, and that can be a little off-putting.
Yeah, but I guess because even the Batman, the first Tim Burton Batman, kind of tried to have a little bit of that 1940s comic feel, and I guess that's what Warren Beatty wanted. Well, just give me the same musical feel, and it'll have that same pizzazz or whatever.
Yeah, he probably kind of, because they were in production at about the same time and they got it finished before, he was like, well, you just did Batman, right? Kind of the same thing. And I think Danny Elfman just heard, do exactly the same thing you did for Batman and just reused like the same cues there. So it really does. It's not just like, wow, it sounds like Danny Elfman did this movie. It literally sounds like they snuck into Warner Brothers and just lifted bits off the cutting room floor.
Exactly, like tracks that didn't make it into the Batman soundtrack just ended up in this movie.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Danny Elfman really phoned this one in.
and we'll get into the story of the movie in a minute because I want to kind of get to the aftermath of this before we really get into it. So the movie comes out, and opening weekend, it actually does pretty well. Number one movie
for 2 weeks. Yeah, for 2 weeks, it's the top of the charts.
And then it makes a very, very bad nosedive because look at the competition. And I want to talk about what the competition that Dick Tracy had to go up against in 1990. Because you're talking about Total Recall. You're talking about Another 48 Hours. You're talking about Gremlins 2. Side note, I saw Gremlins 2 that weekend. I did not see Dick Tracy. RoboCop 2, Days of Thunder, Die Hard 2, Jetsons the movie, Ghost, Arachnophobia. I'll get to it because that does play into this movie. Problem Child will come out less than a month after this. So those are all of your competition. So yeah, Dick Tracy did well for the first 2 weeks, but I think everyone who wanted to see Dick Tracy already saw it. And then they kind of, they moved on to Days of Thunder. They moved on to RoboCop 2. They moved on to freaking Ghost Dad.
Well, yeah, there were a lot of sequels to really heavy-hitting franchises that came out that year as well.
Just before this was Back to the Future 3. So yeah, it was a big year. The summer of 1990 was a very heavy competition year. That summer, it was a miracle that Dick Tracy got the success that it had. It still became one of the top 10 movies of the year, but it had a lot of competition.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the opening weekend was actually kind of huge for Disney. I think it was like their biggest opening weekend ever at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so Disney, like that opening weekend, and the thing we didn't say is that they saw what Batman had done the year before with that Batmania, marketing push. And they were like, okay, let's do the exact same thing.
So then you had Dick Tracy toys. I had Dick Tracy toys. I had Dick Tracy and I had Lips Manless action figures. Did not get Big Boy.
I only had the watch. I mean, I don't think I had the action figures, but I definitely think I had one of the watches. And then I had some of the like Happy Meal toys or whatever.
Yeah.
But my dad was far more a Dick Tracy fan than I was. Dick Tracy wasn't really where I was at in like comic book, cartoony kind of space at that time. So I mostly knew of Dick Tracy because of my dad being a huge fan of Dick Tracy. I was very much more the like, if there was going to be like a detective in a fedora and a trench coat, it was going to be Inspector Gadget.
Yeah. And that is where a lot of the problems happened with this movie. The marketing budget ballooned way past what the film budget ballooned to. The 25 something million dollars that Disney put, and it made back the 15 or so million that it went over budget that Beatty had to pay. Sure, but it wasn't making back that marketing budget because they had put so much into it. There was even a video game. There was a Dick Tracy video game for Nintendo.
I remember that. My goodness, yes, I remember it because that iconography that they used. Whoever designed the poster and the look of the logos and stuff that they used for that, I give them a lot of credit because I can like throw back in my memory to like walking down toy aisles or aisles in like video rental stores and stuff like that. And I can remember so clearly when you would come across that cover for the VHS for this movie or for the Nintendo game cover or whatever, because they all had that same logo in those like bright red and blue and yellow. It was a very just kind of like that, much like the Batman, it was just that like stark black with the bright yellow bat logo. It's very iconic. And it will stand out in the middle of like if you've got all this artwork from all these other movies in a video store. And then all of a sudden you've just got like this like single color, or 2 or 3 color logo, and that's why like some logos are just so iconic, like the Ghostbusters logo. You can always find that. It sticks out to you. Or the Batman logo for the Tim Burton movies, or the Dick Tracy, absolutely I put up there, because even if that's not your thing, it's visually just like bam.
So, I mean, and I mentioned arachnophobia because I have to put this here. We've talked about this before, and that has to do with another Disney property, Roger Rabbit. We talked about this when we talked about the Roger Rabbit shorts. The third and final Roger Rabbit short, Roller Coaster Rabbit, was supposed to go with arachnophobia because Spielberg had 50% ownership of Roger Rabbit. He was producing arachnophobia. He wanted these two paired up, but Disney overrode him because they started getting very nervous. Remember how I said 1990 was a very, very competitive summer? There was some concern that Dick Tracy may not be the big hit that they were hoping for. So they took Roller Coaster Rabbit and they paired it with Dick Tracy. in the hopes that even if people who weren't interested in the Dick Tracy movie might be willing to buy a ticket just to see this Roger Rabbit short. And boy, did that make Mr. Spielberg very angry.
I mean, I don't blame him.
So that he pulled all of his permissions for any future Roger Rabbit shorts. There was supposed to be a Roger Rabbit land in Hollywood Studios, MGM Studios, that got scrapped because of all of this. So, like, there was a lot of issues because of Disney's decision to put that Roger Rabbit cartoon in front of Dick Tracy. And when Dick Tracy didn't do as, again, after those first 2 weeks and Dick Tracy plummeted down, plans for a Dick Tracy ride at Disney also disappeared. So there was plans for it. There was a Dick Tracy show, a stage show at Disneyland that featured the songs from the movie, but there was going to be a Dick Tracy ride. That never happened because the movie kind of nosedived after those first 2 weeks.
Did do the Dick Tracy show at Disneyland for a little bit, I believe.
Yeah, they did.
I think that went through, but yeah, they never actually built any rides or anything. I mean, you can't really blame Disney for being upset at the box office numbers, because if you look it up, the reported box office take for Dick Tracy was just under 163 million. The year before, okay, the box office for Batman, these are the numbers they're expecting it to do, was almost 412 million. So you're coming in like 300 million something short, you know, as
So,
for
yeah,
what the studio is planning on.
There goes any hope of Dick Tracy 2. And that put Beatty and Disney kind of at odds for a while. Disney wouldn't do anything with the franchise until about 5 years later. And I didn't even know about this until I was doing the research for this. Nancy Kerrigan TV special, where she was doing ice skating routines to various Disney songs, did one of the songs from Dick Tracy. And they had actors playing Dick Tracy and all of the characters from the movie.
Guess who might have remembered this because she was an ice skating girly when she was a kid?
So, yeah. So, obviously, Warren Beatty would have to have signed off on that. But I guess he did it under the pretense that there would be a sequel made, and then it never got made. So, Beatty ends up suing Disney. I'm guessing Disney had what is called the right of first refusal, meaning if Beatty wanted to make another movie, he would have to offer it to Disney first. And then if they say no, he can offer it to another studio. So he sued to get out of that. That's my assumption. He wins. He can go to any studio he wants to do a Dick Tracy movie, but no one wants to do a Dick Tracy movie.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to say before we get into the really funny part of this story, I'm going to say that this whole thing, starting at about this point in the story, this whole thing was absolutely foreseeable and avoidable. If anybody on the Disney side of things had had like just the teensy tiniest bit of like brain cells, I mean, I'm kind of laying this at like Katzenberg et al. At the time, because they're looking at it and they're going like, okay, let's put it this way. They're looking at it and they're going, okay, Warner Brothers is putting out a Batman movie. That's based on a comic book. It's gonna do bang. Oh, we've got a movie based on a comic book. It is called Dick Tracy. It will also do bang. That to me is like looking at something today and being like, that studio has Deadpool. They're going to make a movie out of it. It's going to make bank. It's going to make all of the money in the world and then print another world full of money just to give it to Deadpool. I also have the rights to a comic book. It is called Archie and Veronica. I am going to make a movie about it, and it will also make 2 worldfuls of money. At that point, I'm the idiot. because those two things are not comparable other than both fit the category of comic book. There is no way you can look at an 80s, 90s kid, kids our age at the time. If you'd have looked at either one of us at the time and been like, hey kid, you want to see a movie about Batman? We would have been like, hell yeah, we want to see a movie about Batman. And then you go, hey kid, you want to see a movie about Dick Tracy? You're going to get one of two answers. Who's Dick Tracy? Or, I guess if nothing else is playing,
I'm going to go see Gremlins 2. You in?
I would have gone seeing Gremlins 2. The only reason I ever saw Dick Tracy at that time was because my dad was a huge Dick Tracy fan. You know who went and saw Dick Tracy? Dads. It was people Warren Beatty's age.
People who would have remembered the comic. People who would have likely remembered the old TV show.
Yeah. Yeah, it was people who were kids between the 40s and the 60s.
We're talking about the same era that gave us a Dragnet movie. Who's going to go see the Dragnet movie? People who grew up watching Dragnet.
And then they're going to go, why is this a screwball comedy? This doesn't make any sense. Honestly, I would have been more likely to go see the Dragnet movie because I watched Dragnet on Nick at Night every night. At least I knew what Dragnet was. Dick Tracy hadn't been on TV in like 20 years,
And I think it's the same thing of let's take, at least the Phantom was a superhero. At least the Shadow was a superhero. Dick Tracy? Not a superhero.
He's a cop. He's a cop that has a neat watch, but by that point, like, the one cool innovation that Dick Tracy ever had, which was that two-way communicator watch, that had been taken by every other property since Dick Tracy introduced it in the mid-40s and turned into way cool.
It was a joke in the Dragnet movie. Tom Hanks with his little TV watch.
Yeah, but, like, it was turned into way cooler things by the time we were kids, including way cooler wrist communicator things,
Penny and Brain had a computer watch, and it was a lot better than Dick Tracy's.
It was a book. Hers was a full-on computer book that had the internet before anybody had figured out what the internet was.
But Brain had the watch.
Yeah, Brain had his little collar. Yeah, he had like the little collar because he was a dog. But like Penny's was just like all of human history in a book that also had a two-way communicator watch in it, and we were like, "Wow, that's so futuristic!" And then now we're like, "Oh yeah, I carry that in my pocket every day."
Apple Watches.
Yeah, but the thing is that, like, but seriously, like, the coolest part about Dick Tracy was so old hat by the time the Dick Tracy movie came out that watching it as a little kid, which we both did. I think we both saw it, even if not in the theaters, like on VHS or TV or whatever around that time. Like, we both saw this movie as kids, and there's nothing cool about it except the visuals. We're like, wow, this looks like a comic book. I'm bored by what I'm seeing, but it looks like a comic book. And the thing is if you'd like taken 5 minutes to ask a kid, you would have known to like temper your expectations, is what I'm saying. So this is all on Disney for being like, this is going to do Batman money. No, it was always going to do Dick Tracy money. There's no universe where this makes more than that.
Yeah, so like I said, Beatty sues Disney, so he's out of that contract. He can spend it. He can take Dick Tracy wherever he wants. No one wants it. No one wants it. No one wants
it. Because it's Dick Tracy!
And we talked about these contract things before. Like, you have a certain amount of time to make something from the rights you have, or you lose the rights.
This is why we get Morbius and Madam Web.
Yeah. And he had 5 years extended because he allowed the Dick Tracy stuff to be used in the Nancy Kerrigan special. That kind of counts as a Dick Tracy thing. So now he has 10 years to figure out another movie. Okay, I need to make a movie or I lose the rights. Tribune Media, who owns Dick Tracy, is already planning a TV show about Dick Tracy. Beatty is not making a new movie. There's no news. There's no casting calls. There's no nothing for a new Dick Tracy movie. We are made in the shade. We are going to put pre-production on a new Dick Tracy show. And as soon as the clock runs out, we can release episode 1. And then Beatty goes, no. Dick Tracy is mine and mine alone. Sues Tribune Media to extend the contract by 2 years so he can make a Dick Tracy movie, because he feels that the mere existence of Tribune Media making a Dick Tracy TV show is preventing him from making a new Dick Tracy movie. Fine. You have 2 years to make a Dick Tracy something, or the rights will revert back to Tribune Media. This is where the really weird stuff comes in. On a random Friday night on Turner Classic Movies, the Dick Tracy special. And here we have 60-something, 70-something-year-old Warren Beatty in costume as Dick Tracy doing a sit-down interview with Leonard Maltin.
I want to know what he did to Leonard Maltin to get him to agree with this.
That's his friend. So it's like, okay, I'm going to call my friend and we're going to do this thing. And it counts as a Dick Tracy something.
Yeah,
Therefore,
you know that old saying of like, a friend will help you move, but a best friend will help you move a body. I'm saying Leonard Maltin's got to be in the best friend category for agreeing to this crap.
Yeah,
because this is definitely helping you move a body kind of nonsense.
This is in the Roger Corman Fantastic Four category of we're making it to keep the rights.
I mean, we have done an episode on the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, and we have seen this special. The Roger Corman Fantastic Four was way better than this special.
So yeah, he does it, and it counts, so it extends it for another 10 years. 10 years later, on a rant in the middle of the pandemic, Tracy zooms in another Dick Tracy special with Leonard Maltin and
Ben Mankiewicz, which, like, now I'm wondering, what do they have on Ben Mankiewicz to get him to do this? I think Ben Mankiewicz was just wanting to be like, and now I'm part of this story. This is Hollywood history in the making.
With Warren Beatty, again, in costume, in character as Dick Tracy on a Zoom call with those two and Warren Beatty.
Yeah, and this one gets so surreal because now, like, Dick Tracy, quote unquote, is like mad at Warren Beatty for not having made a movie.
Like, it's been 30 years, you haven't made a sequel yet. Even if you had to find someone younger to play me, that's fine. Just make something.
Do you not want to make a movie about me? Is that why you haven't made a movie about me? Like, oh my God, it's so painful.
And then he goes into this boomer logic. It's those dang kids on their cell phones. And like, oh, God.
Yeah, he goes into the most boomer rant about, like, nobody wants to get in their car today and drive to a theater and sit in a theater. Like, now they want to be able to pause a movie to use the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Prostate, I'm pretty sure that you're going to need to use the bathroom during a normal length movie. Like, everybody's got to pee, man.
And I feel embarrassed for these people, for all 4 of them. I am embarrassed for the Dick Tracy fictional character for being associated.
Yeah, you're embarrassed for Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy is not even a person.
But he extends it for another 10 years until, and I have to stress this, January 1st, 2027, Dick Tracy goes into the public domain. Warren Beatty had say nothing about it. January 1st, 2027, anyone can make their own Dick Tracy movie. Anyone can make their own Dick Tracy TV show. It's public domain. You can do whatever you want.
You know what's really funny is, like, I was thinking when I was watching that, like, Tracy zooms in and well, and also like the Leonard Maltin, just the one with Leonard Maltin is like, I was thinking, man, I have seen like, you know, nostalgia critic movies that had more effort put into them than this thing. And then I thought like, starting like next year at time of recording, I kind of want to see like every half-ass YouTuber like put out their own version of Dick Tracy. I want it to be a Dick Tracy free-for-all on YouTube.
Yeah, it's going to be a freaking horror movie. I know it's going to be a freaking horror movie.
Somebody is already right now in the middle of production on, like, there is some dude in a blood-splattered yellow trench coat right now, like somewhere in the woods in the US filming that as we're recording this. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
And they're just waiting for like January 1st. It's going to be like already finished, coming in 5 weeks, like.
Yeah. Okay, we've stalled enough. Let's actually talk about...
It's because this movie is boring. Dick Tracy is boring. Everything about Dick Tracy is boring. Except for Warren Beatty's slow descent into madness. That is hilarious. But Dick Tracy as a character, as a movie, boring as hell.
Yeah, so let's kind of finally talk about what this movie's about.
Boredom, naps, Ambien.
This thing does have a plot. Big Boy Caprice, Al Pacino's character, wants to become the new crime boss of Nameless City. I'm sure Dick Tracy has a town that he takes care of. It's never named in the movie, and I don't care to look it up. Nameless City. So Big Boy Caprice wants to be the new crime boss of Nameless City, and he's kind of taking out all of the other crime bosses. He tries to get the other crime bosses to organize with him, as he says, a board of directors with him as the CEO of crime. And everyone's like, yeah, why should we follow you, big boy? Why should we follow you, big boy, of all the things you do? Why? And so he starts killing them off. Like, okay, you won't follow me? You're dead. And all of your people are going to follow me anyway. That's kind of why he starts the movie killing Lips, because Lips runs the club that Madonna works at, and now I'm taking over your club. Madonna works for me. Yeah. And it's I've seen this story told better in Batman. Like, this is the Penguin story. Like, the Penguin gets a club and Batman kind of goes, I know you're going to mess up one day, Penguin. I just know it. Batman, my place is a legitimate business. I've gone straight, Batman. You can't get me for anything. That's the movie, is Big Boy running a crime ring while also running a legitimate business, and Dick Tracy can't pin him down for anything. He knows that Big Boy is doing crime. He just does not have the evidence to put him down.
And, if this were Dirty Harry or something, he would just grab one of the nameless goons that work for him, or in Dick Tracy's case, one of the, like, absolute horror show deformed, goons that work for him. And he would just, beat the crap out of them until they gave up. And they kind of do that with Mumbles, and it's one of the few, like, legit laughs in the movie where, like, he finally gets Mumbles to break under the hot lights and everything, and, like, Mumbles, who is brilliantly played by Dustin Hoffman, goes from, like, to, like, oh yeah, Big Boy's got the club downtown, and, like, here's where you can find all the money, and he just, like, switches from mumbling to being, like, the most perfectly, like his diction is absolutely perfect from that moment on, and then he's like, okay, see you, bye, and then he runs out of the room.
And that's the thing, everyone in this movie, with the exception of Dick Tracy, the kid, Tess, with the exception of the other cops, every other character is a classic Dick Tracy villain, including Breathless, including 88 Keys. They're all criminals. And they all become criminals in the movie, all trying to take down Tracy. So, like, at first you kind of feel sorry for, like, because Big Boy is abusing 88. Because, oh, he's not playing good enough. I'm going to slam the lid of the piano onto his hand so he plays better. So you kind of feel sorry for 88 because he's being abused. But then midpoint in the movie, oh, now he's one of Big Boy's goons. He's working for him. He's setting up Tracy for Dick Van Dyke's murder. So you don't really feel sorry for him anymore.
Yeah, even Dick Van Dyke is in the pocket of Big Boy. Like, you find out that, like, he's actually crooked. You know, he plays the district attorney, and every time Dick Tracy goes in there, he's like, hey, you know, I need a warrant for this or that. And the district attorney's like, yeah, no dice, not enough evidence, whatever. And then you find out, you know, kind of fairly early in the movie, that it's because Dick Van Dyke's character is in the pocket of, you know, Big Boy, Al Pacino, who can we just say Al Pacino's performance in this is the craziest Al Pacino has ever been on camera.
The only thing missing was a hoo-ha.
Yeah, I mean, he needs that, like, hoo-ha, you know, like, but that's, you watch all these compilations of, like, ooh, isn't Al Pacino so crazy on camera? No, this is the most unhinged Al Pacino performance because he's under all that prosthetics with the big chin and the big nose and the, you know, whatever.
Pretty sure they gave him a hump too.
Yeah, I mean, he's like everybody in this except for Dick Tracy, the kid, and like Madonna, you know, and I guess Tess, you know,
like, and 88.
No, because they put that bald cap and stuff on Mandy Patinkin, and they've given him like, they've changed his look, so he's even wearing prosthetics in the movie.
Like, I get the dedication to make these characters look as close to their comic book counterparts as possible.
And it's amazing what they did, because they really do make them look like that. But the thing is that the way that the artist drew them, you know, the way Chester Gould drew them was very grotesque, because that was kind of the style with the comics code at the time, is you never were allowed, even though comic strips weren't really under the comics code, he did a lot of the same things. And he wanted to make sure that kids reading would understand that, like, you know, crime is bad, kids. And one of the ways they did that was they always had criminals look grotesque. You never wanted to have, the idea at the time was you never wanted a kid to look at a criminal and go like, wow, they look slick, I want to look like them, you know? Which is why a lot of the Batman villains are like, you know, the Penguin and the Joker and stuff, you know, they're all these kind of like, you know, Two-Face has his, it's not because like, oh, they've got superpowers or whatever, even when they don't, it's because they've been disfigured due to crime, because it comes from the same time period.
They look that way because they're evil.
Yeah, you want to make sure that in no way does crime look appealing to the children reading it. And so when they did it, they didn't change it. You know, Tim Burton, I mean, we have to keep comparing them because they were meant to be compared. I mean, Disney was trying to ape the style in a lot of ways of Batman. But, you know, Tim Burton did like a version of those characters. Warren Beatty was like, look at this drawing on the page. I want you to render that in real life.
And again, I appreciate the dedication to try to be as accurate as possible to the characters.
It works amazingly, but the problem is that they are like truly grotesque. So it makes a lot of the movie off-putting for a little kid.
Like at the beginning, the way they make Littleface look, like you never see Littleface straight on in the camera. It's either a behind shot or a super close up to show that he has a normal size head and a very tiny face. So you have a normal actor with a really big prosthetic head for the close up shots, and then another stand-in actor where you see him from behind, and that looks weird.
Yeah, and the way that they made Lips look for, like, his couple of scenes is, like, the way he eats and stuff is supposed to be, like, really disgusting because of his oversized lips and stuff. Like, even Breathless mentions it. You know, "I can't stand the way you eat," and all that kinda stuff. And so, it is, like, it is kind of disgusting to watch, even though you can sit there and go like, "Wow, I appreciate the amount of work and the artistry it took to put this all together." It is, you know, you can say the same thing about a lot of horror movies and then go, but also it's stomach turning.
Yeah. We're introduced to the kid very early in the movie. And I like that the kid is basically our POV character. We've talked about this before. Sometimes getting a kid character in an already established world makes getting into that world a little bit easier because you can already have these characters fully formed. We talked about this with like Jubilee in the X-Men cartoons and stuff like that. These characters are already fully formed, and this kid is interacting with these characters for the first time. And we are introduced to these characters through the kid. Like, it's the kid who is this homeless orphan sneaking into a building that just happens to have a bunch of the gangsters in it, and we're introduced to the gangsters through the kid. And then he meets Tracy and Tess and all of the other criminals that way, which works in this movie.
Yeah, and he's very definitely supposed to be the stand-in for and you know, it's very heavily gendered. It's like, you know, it's supposed to be the stand-in for the little boy watching this in theater, you know?
Yeah.
Because as he goes through his, you know, like, I'm just the no account kid, you know, and then Tracy saves me, and then I want to be just like Dick Tracy. It's very obvious that the little boy watching in the theater is supposed to, by the end of the movie, being like, hey, if that kid can be just like Dick Tracy, I can be just like Dick Tracy too, you know?
Which is why the kid was introduced in the comic to begin with. The kid is from the comic.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the same reason that like Robin in Batman was introduced, and it's the same reason why like Kid Flash, you know, was introduced, and you know, all that kind of stuff.
And that's kind of becomes his thing, is that he's gotten a taste for being a detective, and oddly enough, the police department wants to make him a junior detective, but kid, you need a name. You don't have a name. You need a name so this certificate could become official and you can become an official junior detective. And that is his entire arc for the whole movie, is deciding what his name is going to be.
And he finally decides on Dick Tracy Jr.
Junior Tracy is from the comic, and yes, he is Dick and Tess's adopted son. I'm so glad we never got the sequel, because in the comics, Junior marries an alien.
I wish we had gotten because at least that would have been an interesting plot point.
I'm not making that up. That's actually what happens in the comic.
Yeah, I mean, Dick Tracy did eventually get weird in the 60s and 70s. Like, eventually Dick Tracy had, like, a hippie sidekick at one point, and, like, yeah, there was some weirdness that went on in there. I think Junior Tracy going on to marry Moonchild, the alien, and then having a half alien, half human baby named Honeymoon was possibly the weirdest part of Dick Tracy. But there were lots of weird parts starting in the 60s and 70s, as they were like, you got to appeal to the kids. But here's the thing, is one of the reasons why the plot of the movie doesn't work to me is like, it's very obviously, you know, we want to get kids in the theater because this is a Disney movie, and the kid, later Junior, is supposed to be the viewpoint character for the kids in the audience. Okay. But the problem is the kid has no connection to the larger plot. Like you said, the kid's only story arc in this is, I don't want to go to the orphanage and they're making me choose a name. That's it. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the major plot. At no point is it like, one of the other kids at the orphanage has been kidnapped by them, and now I have to become a detective and go because nobody cares about us little kids at the orphanage. Like it's never that.
Or, it's cliche, but like Lips had a secret son that is inheriting all of Lips's money now that he's dead. We got to find the secret son that he gave up years ago. And it's the kid.
Yeah.
And then Big Boy wants to kill the kid so he can inherit the money and whatever and blah blah blah.
Yeah, anything. Literally anything that would make, cuz right now you could edit out all of the kids' scenes and it would not change the A plot of this movie like any, except for the one scene where he follows Tracy and unties him from a trap that some of the gangsters set up. That's it. That's like the one time where he really intersects with the A plot. We're like, okay, if you edit that one scene out, you are going to have to explain how Dick Tracy got out of that thing. But other than that, you could surgically remove all of those scenes with the kid, and you basically have the same movie.
You could do the same to Tess.
Yeah, but that's a little less. I mean, it's annoying, but Tess was never meant to be the viewpoint character. You can tell where the kid is meant to be like Tess is always, and it's one of the reasons why the movie is boring, is like Tess is literally just supposed to be like, that's why she's Tess' true heart. It's like, I'm just the steady gal that's gonna stay there. Her character arc is, boy, I wish Tracy would settle down and take a desk job and have more time for me. And the end of her character arc is, well, at least he's going to marry me, but I know he'll never settle down and take a desk job, so I'll just take what I can get. At least I've got a kid to look after now.
Well, at least she doesn't have to actually have the kid, and the kid's already like 8 or 10 years old, so,
Yeah, I mean, it's already in the walkie-talkie and can dress itself stage, so, I mean, I guess she got away easy on that. But, still, I mean, it's like, her character arc is not even, it's like a character speed bump, It's like
unless you're paying attention, you don't really know what her job is. Like, she ends up staying over at Tracy's apartment while he's out, following the bad guys, taking care of the kid. And then she wakes up and goes, "Oh, I'm going to be late for work at the greenhouse." And that's the only thing you get of her outside life, outside of Dick Tracy. And that's only said because they got enough, because we need to have Dick Tracy get to the greenhouse so he can have that put to sleep by the gas.
Yeah, it's really, but and then they have like kind of a dramatic scene of like, I'm gonna go stay at my mother's, and then she goes and stays at her mother's, and her mother's big wisdom is, well, he's never gonna take a desk job, so you might as well just live with it. And she's like, you're right, Mom. He is a good fella who's always gonna ignore me, and I'm gonna marry him anyway. Thanks. And she heads back.
First scene with Tess and Dick Tracy, they're on a date at the opera, and he gets a call on the watch for Lips
that blasts police business loudly to everybody else watching the opera.
I love that. This is kind of a joke because he leaves the opera. He leaves the opera, goes halfway across town to where Lips' murder happened, and then makes it back to the date, and it's the same song of the opera playing. Like nothing's moved since then.
Which, I mean, fair. And I say that as a legitimate fan of opera, but still, fair.
So like, I'm coming from this point here, not just from Kiki, but any person listening. If your partner had a business call in the middle of your date, and you have, I assume you would have the agreement, hey, no business on the date, you're off tonight, and then he takes the business call and their Zooms off, there's going to be a discussion after that. And there's no discussion after this. But, talk about our other main villain, the Blank.
You mean the Question?
Yeah, the Question. In the comics, the Blank is a man named Frank Redrum. And he wears this faceless mask because he's a very ugly man, because all of the characters in Dick Tracy that are evil are ugly. That's just, with the exception of Breathless, because she is the femme fatale.
You can't make a woman ugly. Are you crazy? An ugly dame? Who would put up with that?
Yeah. But in the movie, they combine the Blank with Breathless. Yeah, that's your big twist. Sorry for the spoil. You're a 30-year-old movie. Uncredited, the voice of the Blank, Frank Welker.
Frank Welker, he is your childhood.
So, anyway, what is Breathless's, aka the Blank's, plan here? Her whole thing is, I want to kill Big Boy. I want to frame Dick Tracy for it. But also, I'm in love with Dick Tracy, and I'm going to convince this good cop with a heart of gold who never breaks the law to side with me so we can rule the criminal underworld. And also, I'm going to fake a kidnapping of his girlfriend so he will leave his girlfriend and be with me.
I mean, I will give her a little bit more credit, because the thing is that you have a feeling that her plan is more, okay, you can treat me badly. I'm kind of used to it. All men treat me badly. But now you're picking on my piano player. And that is some nonsense up with which I shall not put, you know? Because I have a feeling that she didn't really get, like, fully into the whole thing until he starts messing with 88 Keys. But I think her whole thing is more like, you know what? I'm sick of this. It's a good plan, but he's an icky guy, and I'm sick of icky guys running stuff.
Like, if it had been a situation where she genuinely loved Lips and wanted revenge for Lips's murder, I could buy that. Like, maybe Lips has let himself go, but that's still the man that she, quote, loves. But we don't get that. It's like, I'm disgusted with him, and I'm not really mourning him. I'm wearing black underwear, but that's about it.
Wish they would have. I mean, of course you can't really do that, because it's Dick Tracy done in the Dick Tracy style, which is very much like, you know, it's the 1930s, 1940s aesthetic, and there's no girl bossing really, you know? Like, the only time you're really getting girl boss in that era on, like, a wide scale was, like, Wonder Woman, you know?
But like I said, that was, Breathless was just as much a criminal as anyone else.
Well, no, but I'm talking about in terms of the plot, like, you're talking about, like, what's her motivation, and I'm saying, like, her just wanting to girl boss it is totally a good motivation, but they don't really get into that in the movie, because that's not really the aesthetic. Like, her being like, why do the boys get all the fun? Like, why not a girl at the top? You know, like,
I mean, it's kind of why she disguises herself as a man.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to take a woman seriously as a crime boss.
Yeah, the only woman crime boss we see is Catherine O'Hara, and she doesn't even get a line.
Yeah.
But, if that had been her thing, like, that men have been too, violent with the women or whatever, it's time for a woman to take over and run the joint or whatever. Like, okay, fine. But they didn't really get into that. It was just kind of like, she just sits in the background. And if you watch the movie, like, knowing the twist of it, there is a lot, and credit to Madonna, she's not the greatest actor, but she's not as bad as everybody kind of, rags on her for.
Looking at you, Todd.
I like Cinemadonna, but the thing is like, with the right director, she's actually okay. And Warren Beatty, for all his faults, is a really good director. And so there's a lot of subtle stuff in the background with her, like, kind of wandering through the scene during important parts while Al Pacino is like, and here's the big plan, boys. And Breathless is just kind of like wandering through, mentally taking notes and stuff. And like, if you know the twist, you're kind of like, oh, okay. It's actually kind of subtle, but not bad in the setup as far as like the way it's framed and the way that the actors are going through the scene and stuff. The way that like Breathless always seems to position herself in the right spot to hear all of the important things, and then all of a sudden the blank shows up and like, you know, oh, I put a wrench in your works, like it is really kind of fascinating, the way that like Breathless as the blank tells 88 Keys to do this, and then she, 88 Keys says, oh, there was a guy, he had no face, and he gives me this, this message to give you and whatever. And Al Pacino goes, that's stupid and you're stupid and I should kill you right now, but I'm not gonna because you're a good piano player or whatever. And then Breathless like immediately runs up and was like, I didn't hear all of that conversation. What were you talking about? And you're like, girl, you heard all of that conversation. You know exactly what that was about.
She's playing
You
dumb.
put him up to it. But the thing is I love that she does it, because even though it earns her a smack from Big Boy, it throws like nobody suspects her after that. You know? And I'm like, it's kind of brilliant the way that she plays it off.
And it kind of does make sense, because throughout ever since taking over Lips's club, Big Boy is very abusive towards Breathless. So it would make sense why she would have this big plot to kill Big Boy.
And not just her, all of her dancers, 88 Keys, all of the staff there, all of the other, Breathless has this really, like, think of the way that she looks at the kid. Like, the one time she meets him is like, he comes in and she's like, wow, that's a cute kid, And it's almost like this wistful, like, this is such a domestic scene I've walked into, you know? Here's Tess and the kid, and they've just come back from like getting ice cream, and it's like adorable and everything. And it's all the stuff she's never had, And you
This
have a
little
feeling
happy
that she's,
family between Tracy and Tess and the kid.
yeah, and you have a feeling that she's like probably in another life would have been like a very nurturing type of person, And I think that just like the way he treats her and the way he treats everybody around her is probably what makes her do that. Because the thing is that if it was just the way that they were treating her, she would have done that with Lips, But Lips was just like, he's just an oaf, and he's okay with just staying in his club,
Yeah, I mean, the only problems, quote, quote, that we see is that he has gained weight and he's a very sloppy eater. That is the only complaints we get from Breathless about Lips.
You have a feeling like he's probably not as like charming and affectionate to her as he once was, but he doesn't seem to be any more abusive to the staff than like any other random boss would be, And so she's content with everything going on. But when it comes to Big Boy being like, so how are we going to play this? Because there's only, you can go the same way Lips went, which is cement overcoat. or you can come with me and you can wear minks and you can be, and she's all like, yeah, I'm not dying, like I've got survival instinct. So even though she's immediately put off by Big Boy, she's like, ooh, but it's better than going that way. And I think that's when she starts going like, okay, I got to figure out some way to like not only like survive this. And I think her first plan is seduce Dick Tracy and maybe he can take her out of the criminal life and just make an honest woman of her.
He's in love with Tess. So there's the competition.
He's in love with Tess. So then she's like, all right, well, maybe he can be persuaded to the criminal lifestyle, but then she sees that he would rather, get blowed up by exploding, heating valve or whatever that they set up for him after they offer to bribe him. And she's like, okay, so he's not going to go crooked. So that's not going to work. So then she's like, well, maybe if I set it up so that it looks like he's gone crooked, he'll go crooked to like save himself, Cause
which make, yeah, that makes sense in that moment. I'll set him up. I'll frame him for the murder of the DA, and he'll break out of jail because I know he can. He'll have no choice because he'll be disgraced.
Yeah.
And then Tess will leave him and stuff, all that, and all that.
And, since Tess is already, gone at that point, she's like, yeah, we've kidnapped Tess as well, But then I think she figures that she won't be able to take Big Boy out by herself. So by setting up I've made it look like Big Boy kidnapped Tess, then Tracy would take out Big Boy, or Tracy would be enough distraction so she could take out Big Boy, which is kind of what ends up partially happening, except in reverse.
And of course, as breathless as the Blake says, she knew that Big Boy would panic. When he sees Tess in his club, tied up, oh crap, this is Tracy's girl, they're going to put it on us. We didn't kidnap her, but we don't have any choice but to kidnap her because they think we already kidnapped her anyway. So he panics and kidnaps her anyway and tries to go for the big, I'm going to bump her off because I don't have a choice because they're not going to believe I didn't kidnap her anyway. This plan would have worked if not for three things. Number one, Breathless truly believes that Tracy would murder Big Boy in cold blood, which Tracy doesn't do. Two, she kills Tracy herself, which she cannot pull the trigger because she has fallen in love with Tracy. And three, the kid coming up from behind and tackling her. If the kid hadn't come up and tackled her, Big Boy wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to shoot her and kill her. But all of that came on to the point where Breathless fully believed that Dick Tracy would kill Big Boy if given the opportunity. But that's not Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy doesn't want to kill Big Boy. Dick Tracy wants to take Big Boy to justice, put him behind bars. In fact, when he does tackle Big Boy and he falls over the side, he tries to grab him. He tries to save him. It's just that he slips and Big Boy falls to his demise.
Yeah, and this, I think, is kind of the point where you kind of have to understand the real tragedy of it, if you can say that in a movie this shallow. Her dying words are like, was there ever a chance for us, And he just doesn't answer her. And I think that the reason that there wasn't a chance for them is because she never understood him even well enough to know that he wouldn't just go in and murder Big Boy like that, And that was something that any cop on the force could have told you that. People that had only met Dick Tracy once or twice could have told you that. Everybody knew that Tracy was the good cop. He was the straight arrow. He was and she was the one that was like, oh, well, in the end, he'll lose it because, Tess is in danger or whatever. And yeah, he does kind of lose it because all of a sudden he has his Batman moment of hey, you jump down here and I'll stand on the other side of this board and it'll seesaw me out the window. And it's
Dick Tracy doing calculations in his little notebook of, okay, my partner weighs this much. There's a lever here. It'll launch me up here. And it's like, okay, jump.
Yeah, it is an almost identical setup to the Batman bursting through the window thing. Him bursting through the skylight and whatever. That is like his one kind of Batman moment, but the other kind of Batman moment is so funny to me because, of course, like I said, he was in his mid-50s at this point, so even the simplest of stunts are going to be done with stuntmen. And the funniest one is the jump from the building onto the lamppost.
Yeah.
Which not even the stunt person could make look cool. It is still to this day one of the most crappy looking stunts I have ever seen. Because one, I guess they couldn't get a stunt person with Warren Beatty's proportions because it is very obviously not Warren Beatty, even filmed from 150 feet away or whatever. It's like, hey, look, a guy who is not Dick Tracy, who happens to be wearing Dick Tracy's coat, is jumping off that building. And then, two, the way that, both the building set and the light pole that they built wobble when the guy jumps off of one and lands on the other.
And I mentioned this before. Anyone who's ever worked with Warren Beatty, whether it be as an actor or a director, this man is a consummate perfectionist. He will have long hours every day to make sure the shot is right. The super perfectionist Warren Beatty filmed that scene and thought it looked good.
No, what that tells me is they filmed that jump 80 times and that was the best take. But, we've got our main villain dead. We've got our secondary villain dead. We're only sad about one of those. And immediately Dick Tracy's like, well, kind of a waste of a hot chick, but what you gonna do? All right, Tess. All right, kid. Let's go home. Or rather than going home, let's go to the diner and grab us a bowl of chili, which seems to be all they do.
Yeah, and it's a running plot throughout the movie is that Tracy is trying to propose to Tess, and he's fumbling his words and he can never get it out, and something always interrupts him before he can finally say the thing. It's like, Tess, don't you get tired of living alone in your apartment all by yourself? I like living alone. Yeah, I like living alone too. We have that in common. Don't you think two people who have so much in common should live together? And they have this conversation multiple times in the movie. He's trying to get it out, and he is fumbling this up. And finally, again, to cap it all off, at the end of the movie, he gets another call. Hey, we got another crime. And he just says, screw it, tosses her the ring, and says, I'll be back.
Yeah, but he also gives the kid his own two-way communicator wristwatch. Wow, Tracy, for me, really?
And it really comes off as Junior is going to be Tracy's official partner as a junior detective. Because they're off to fight the crime together.
Because that's what the cops need, an 8-year-old on the force.
I mean, they straight up say, oh, yeah, he could be Tracy's partner one day.
Apparently one day means a week from Wednesday. The only thing that was stopping you from being a kid, and the only thing that was stopping you from being a police officer at 8 years old was you didn't have a name yet, kid.
And, that's Dick Tracy. like I said, the story behind the movie is more interesting than the story in the movie.
Well, I'm gonna say something that was said by a much better movie critic than either of us. So Peter Travers from Rolling Stone was comparing this movie to Batman because, like I said, you're gonna compare them. It's impossible not to. And he talked about how like both of them had this is a direct quote: a loner hero, a grotesque villain, blonde bombshell, a marketable pop soundtrack, and a no mercy merchandising campaign. Okay? And then he goes on to say, quote, but Batman possesses something else, a psychological depth that gives the audience a stake in the characters. And that, I think, is why I will still watch Batman rather consistently. You know, the 1989 Batman, it's not like my favorite Batman movie ever made. But compared to something like Dick Tracy, you know, I haven't seen Dick Tracy probably since like 1993. But, you know, I've seen the 1989 Batman within the last year, and not even for like this podcast or anything. It's just for fun, you know? And it's because like they get into like who is Bruce Wayne as a person.
Bruce Wayne has a character arc in the
Yeah.
89 Batman movie. It's not just he is Batman, he is Playboy Bruce Wayne. He is a person that is psychologically damaged from watching his parents murdered when he was a kid. He is confronting the person that murdered his parents, and he's also opening himself up to being in love with Vicky Vale.
Also, like, the Joker has a character arc in Batman, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I mean, what's Big Boy's character arc in this movie?
He wants to be the head crime boss.
No, that's his motivation. What's his character arc? Should I play the Jeopardy theme song? Is it going to take you that long? No, it's not. He doesn't have one. There you go.
Neither does Tracy.
Neither does Tracy. Tracy's character arc is watch to catch villain. Caught villain. I mean, maybe you could say character arc is, should I marry girl? Okay, I'll marry girl. Like, but like they don't really get into it. It's not really a struggle. It's just kind of like, yeah, I want to propose, but I kind of fumble my words. Like he goes from like wanting to propose to like sort of kind of proposing, but not really.
Or do I choose the good-natured good girl that's been by my side this whole time, or do I go for the bad girl?
No, I do not accept that as any sort of, like, he allows her to kiss him like twice. But like even in the movie, like Warren Beatty can be like a really passionate leading man. Anytime Madonna kisses him in this movie, and I will remind you, they were actively dating at this point.
He's in the Truth or Dare documentary.
Yeah. And this was Madonna in the 80s at the height of her Madonna-ness, okay? They were dating. And whenever she kisses him on screen, she is oozing Madonna. And he might as well be a cardboard cutout in a yellow trench coat. Because Dick Tracy is not into her. He's like, yowza, that is an attractive woman. But he is never tempted by her. She has that whole scene where she's like crawling all over his desk and stuff. And the most he does is drop the earring of hers he found in her champagne glass. And he does it completely dispassionately, like, look, I have evidence placing you at the crime scene. Do you want to talk now or later? Like, you know, and it's like, and she is like actively putting her rear end in his face at the moment. And he is completely unmoved. Like, at no point do you realistically look at those two and be like, he's into her. Now, you realistically look at the movie and be like, Madonna in the 80s, yeah, I would. Because Madonna in the 80s. But, like, Dick Tracy is not into Breathless Mahoney at any point during this movie. So I do not accept that as a character arc because it's never put on screen that she is ever tempting him in any realistic fashion.
I mean, if you had to go for a single character arc for either character, Big Boy is, I want Dick Tracy dead. And for Dick Tracy is, I want to put Big Boy behind bars.
And neither of them get what they want.
No.
Good job, movie. L's all around.
So let's ask the question. Kiki, Dick Tracy, magic?
I mean, visually, yeah. I mean, it's got several Sondheim bangers in it. But, like, as a full movie, just to sit down and watch and be like, is this going to entertain you? Probably not.
I'm not going to poo-poo on Warren Beatty as a director. Like I said, he is an award-winning...
I love movies that he's directed.
Yeah. So he's a great director. And the visuals, like his attempts to make this look like a comic book come to life is amazing. But
yeah,
I will agree with you. There is no meat in this story. There's a lot of parsley on the plate, but where are the meat and potatoes? And that's where I think that's the path around. Like the music is great. Not only the Sondheim songs, the reject Batman songs from Danny Elfman are actually pretty good. The visuals are great. The costumes look like, again, everything in this movie looks like it comes out of a comic book. It's just, there's not a lot of story here. And in that regard, I will say no magic. I've said this before. You had your chance, Mr. Beatty. You should have given someone else an opportunity to do something with these characters. And I am so disappointed that it's going to take this character going into the public domain for anyone else to get a chance to do something with this character.
Well, I am going to ask you a question, though, because we were talking about, like, him protecting it as much as he could. And I would say that he's basically, he himself has kind of ruined the character with those last two weird TCM whatevers. But, you know, if no one is going to do a quote unquote faithful Dick Tracy to that time period. And I'm going to say it's because no one really wants a faithful Dick Tracy to that time period. No one wanted it in 1990, and even fewer people want it today. Maybe there's a way you can modernize it and make it palatable to people today. Wonder about that, even. I don't know how you do this, except you make him, like, Dirty Harry or something for the modern day. But the thing is, like, the point of Dick Tracy is, like, he's a cop, and, you know, I mean, let's just say it, like, propaganda's kind of fallen by the wayside a lot. So I kind of wonder, I mean, maybe if you make him a private detective or something instead of, like, active police force, but then he's basically just a murder mystery guy. You know, like, you don't get the rogues gallery, you don't get the, you know, if you try to give him superpowers, then once again, that's not Dick Tracy, that's Batman something. You know, it's not even Batman, it's, you know, a completely different character. You're dealing with, like, the Shadow or something at that point.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'll be interested to see what happens when it goes into the public domain and see what people do other than the obvious, they're immediately going to make, like, 4 horror movies about it. But I think Dick Tracy had his time. I think that time has gone. Maybe it'll come around again, but I don't think that time is now.
It could work as a Goodfellas like period piece.
I mean, maybe, but I think you'd have to do it very tongue-in-cheek and very camp. Like, I think you'd have to do it kind of the way we've been doing on the podcast. You know, you'd have to have people kind of come in and, like, wink to the camera and be, wow, Tracy, you're a really straight arrow kind of guy. Look at that dame over there. She's really great. You know, like, it would have to be like a very, almost a spoof, you know, maybe a loving one, but I think it would have to be like very campy, almost comedic in tone. I don't think you can do a serious Dick Tracy. I honestly think the 1990 film is maybe the best anybody could have done. They just needed a slightly deeper plot. You know, flesh out the characters just a teeny tiny bit more, and it would have been like a really decent movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. But we'll see. Again, like I said, January 1st, 2027, Tracy enters the public domain. We'll see what happens after that.
YouTube, do not disappoint me. I need everybody doing their best Dick Tracy short films. Come on.
Yeah. So let's move on. Next month, we are staying in the world of comic books, but we are going to go back to the world of Marvel Comics, but not the MCU. This has been something that me and Kiki have wanted to do for a long time. We are going into the pre-MCU. And now we're not talking about movies like Blade or X-Men or Spider-Man. No, we're going further back. We're going into the 1970s. We're going into the 1980s. We're going into what before Marvel even knew what they wanted their movies to be.
Yeah. There wasn't even a Marvel Studios where we're going.
So we are going to be talking about next week, to kick this off, we are going to be talking about Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Lou Ferrigno, Bill Bixby,
and John Rhys Davies.
Yeah, Daredevil Born Again Season 2 just started. We are recording this episode. The first episode of Season 2 just dropped as we are recording this episode. So this is actually the first official televised live action appearance of Daredevil in a Marvel anything. So it's going to be interesting to go back to like the first live action Daredevil, the first live action Kingpin in this world with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. That is going to be very fun to go back to.
Yeah.
So come back next week for Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.